So my exhortation this morning is based on the incident that occurred a long time ago, during the time of Moses, when the children of Israel were given a directive in their journey from Egypt. They were told that at some stage you are going to reach a place where there will be two mountains. And these two mountains will be Mount Gerizim. And that mountain will cast your blessings there. And Mount Ebal will be on the right. It will be a curse. Now, when I looked at that event, quite an exciting event in comparison to the times that we are living now as well. In the instruction that God gave, He says the outcome will be determined by the choice that you make. You either choose to be blessed or you choose to be cursed. Now, if we speak of choices, choices shapes our lives. Choices is an everyday thing. Regrets or success are linked to the choices we make. If we look at the ministry of Jesus Christ, He was very interrogating or thought-provoking, and He was direct, similar to the instruction that the children of Israel were given. If we look at the examples of the people that He asked to make a choice, there are many, but we'll take one, the rich young man. He came to Jesus, so fired up, with energy, and he thought he had everything. And he said to Jesus, Master, what do I need to do to inherit the kingdom? And then Jesus said to him, go back, sell all your stuff, and come back and follow me. What happened there is history. He went and he never came back. Coming back to Deuteronomy, we know that this was the time Moses was leading the children of Israel into the promised land, into Canaan. Then he later, as we know, he did not enter into the kingdom. He later handed over the baton to Joshua. And Joshua, knowing, having been there, when this information was being shared, when the word was being shared and shared out loudly, after he was handed over, he took over from Moses. We read in Joshua 24, verse 15, and he was talking to the very same people that had heard the word, or some of them were children of the people that had heard this word. He says, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of Amorites in whose land you dwell now. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So Joshua was decisive. He was direct in his message and he knew what he wanted. The choice that he made is, whatever you're going to do, I will serve the Lord. Now we need to look at this from the context of blessing and cursing, because the blessing and cursing had conditions. The conditions were, we have given you the word, we have given you the rules. You need to follow these rules in order for you to be blessed. Failure to do that, you will be cursed. So, as I alluded to, we make choices every day. And these choices that we make, we need to own the consequences, good or bad. But we know that it is always human that if we make choices and everything goes well, we celebrate. If we make choices and the outcome is bad, we blame our neighbor, we blame our friend, we blame God for allowing some of the things that we have made decisions on our own as the cause of that decision. We are told in Romans that if we make wrong choices, we could shorten the days of our lives, because sin brings death. Now, when the word was being given, Moses was speaking to the people that had witnessed what happened in captivity. It says, "Know today that I do not speak with your children who have not known or who have not seen." They have not, I'm speaking to you. The people that saw what God did for us to take us out from captivity, the miracles that were performed, they all saw that. You were speaking to people that had first-hand experience. But if people that had first-hand experience struggled to manage the situation, how much more with us? I'm sure for a second, it sounds like a valid way out. For us, that is. We will say, no, we were not there. We are only learning of it now. But we are supposed to refer through reading every day and look out for the mentioned signs that are taking place. Moses was addressing the generation which saw the work of God among Israel, both in blessing and in cursing. He spoke to them that so that they should know and remember. So with us, there is no way out as well. It's a sure thing that we have all the word written, and we can actually refer to it and look out for the signs of the things that are happening now as points of reference. I want to read verse 10 of Deuteronomy. Verse 10 of Deuteronomy speaks about, and this is the story of the children of Israel when they were being given the rules and everything that they need to do. As I just mentioned earlier, that they had seen firsthand, they had witnessed. And if we catch it up on from verse 10, it speaks about the instruction being given that the land you're going to enter or to take over is not like the land of Egypt, from which you had come, where you planted your seed and irrigated it by foot as in a vegetable garden. Now, we know that technology, a lot of technology came from Egypt. They were very creative people. Even up to now, they do. Now, from this verse, which mentions that you irrigated by foot, it's referring to, some commentaries say, to the system of artificial irrigation using foot-driven pumps to lift water from the Nile to nearby fields. But Canaan was not like that, the promised land. The promised land was blessed and so rich, it did not need this kind of irrigation. Now, I want us to cast our minds to the Garden of Eden. Well, as we have read and as we envision, we know that Adam and Eve were living with everything. They didn't need to do anything, and they had everything they want. If we look at that, technology is only catching up now, where you have type of fruits or vegetables all year round. Back then, there was everything and available in abundance. Verse 11 of Deuteronomy 11, it reads, "But the land you are crossing, the Jordan, to take possession of, is land of mountains and valleys that drinks rain from heaven." This is proper providence. We will lack nothing if God is on our side. We will lack nothing when God's eyes are zooming out on us. We will lack nothing if we obey the rules or we follow the rules that we are asked to adhere to. Now, if you go down in verse 14 of Deuteronomy 11, Now that I read verse 11, I'll just continue on verse 12 up to verse 14. It goes on to say, from verse 11, it says, valley that drinks rain from heaven. In verse 12, it is the land the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are continually on it from the beginning of the year to its end. Verse 13, so if you faithfully obey commands I'm giving you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Verse 14, then I will send rain on your land in its season, both autumn and spring rains, so that you may gather in your corn, new wine, and olive oil. So verse 14 speaks of the rain season, the early rains and the latter rains. The early rain used to, if we look in our time now, it used to fall end of August into September, and was important to soften the ground for plowing and preparing the soil for the seed. And I think those that come from a farming background or those that enjoy their garden, they know that this is the time when this happens. In the latter, rain fell about February, March, and April, and helped the crops come to final harvest. We do have a challenge now. Seasons are confused, and we call it climate change. Or are the seasons really confused, or it's a curse for disobedience? I think God's project plan never fails. But the project plan can be changed if we fail to follow the rules. And we know that Moses was clear with that as well. You do this, and I'll do this from my side. You don't do this, these are the consequences, and you should bear those consequences. If we go down in Deuteronomy 16 and 17, so what did God say if you fail to do what he wanted or what was proclaimed? Be careful, or you will be enticed to turn away and worship other gods and bow down to them. This is verse 16. In verse 17, then the Lord's anger will burn against you, and he will shut the heavens so that it will not rain, and the ground will yield no produce, and you will soon perish from the good land the Lord is giving you. It is quite clear in terms of the message or the instruction. If you follow the path, you get the results. If you disobey, you also get the negative results. Now, the world is at its best. We are seeing these signs. We see them every day. So with information like this, the world is at its worst. We need to be at our best in making sure that we follow these rules. We just read in verse 17 that the heavens will be shut and there will be no yield and you will suffer. In 1 Kings, we read of the story of Elijah. He announces a great drought. I'll read verses 1 to 5. Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Galilee said to Ahab, as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. So again, here we see that God thinks for his people. I'm going to give you just enough for you to sustain, except at my word. So he will know that you need so much rain, he will give you, and then that will be it. Why is that? The reason why God would act like that is because he wants us to always look back at him or rely on him. Verse 2, then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Cherith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to Cherith ravine, east of the Jordan, and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And if you read this, if you continue reading this story, or if you know the story, it's also a fascinating story. At some stage, the brook went dry. He had to move to another place. Now, the moral of this whole story again is about the trust and obedience of God in following his instruction. Who would have thought that the ravens will bring food to Elijah? If you tell me now that the ravens will feed me in my corner, I will probably think twice. Elijah was relying on God, and he kept his relationship with God. We also need to do the same, because we are kept at a bare minimum, because anything high might make us think otherwise. God will give us just enough to sustain so that we keep our relationship intact. Because sometimes when we get more, we will think these blessings are coming from our own hands. In verse 22 of Deuteronomy 11, we read, or let me rather continue in verse 18 to 22 so that you get better understanding. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children. Stop talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them at the doorframes of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land that the Lord swore to give you, your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. And now, verse 22. If you carefully observe all these commands I am giving you to follow, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to hold fast to him. So there's three things that is given to the children, to the Israelites. The promise of blessing was based on the condition that you love the Lord your God, you walk in obedience to him, and you hold fast to him. And God also promised to fight the battles for an obedient Israel. Many desire God to fight their battles, similar to the Israelites, but have little interest in obeying him or cultivating the deep relationship of love which obedience grows from. Now, we read of the repeat of promise in Joshua. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised to Moses. This is a repetition of the words from Deuteronomy. So here we can see that God keeps his promise. In 1 John 4, verse 4, we are also told, you, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. God fights our battles. God gives promises and God fulfills them. Now, if we go down, I'm just going to jump a few verses in the interest of time. From the first verses of Deuteronomy 11, we read of the children of Israel being given instruction that you are going to get to a point where you will see two mountains. Mount Gerizim will be blessing, and Mount Ebal the cursing. See, I'm setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you obey the commands of the Lord your God that I'm giving you today. The curse, if you disobey the commands of the Lord your God and turn from the way that I command you today by following other gods, which you have not known. The conditions were based on law, sacrifice, and choice. So you need to choose wisely. It was the blessing then. If we look at the blessing now, and the cursing, it is important to recognize that we, in Jesus Christ, we expect to be blessed with a slightly different model, but pointing towards the same result. The curse and the blessings were we deserved were laid upon him. In Galatians 3, verse 10 to 14, we read, "For all who rely on the works of the law are under the curse, as it is written. Cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law." Clearly, no one who relies on the law is justified before God, because the righteous will live by faith. The law is not based on faith. On the contrary, it says, the person who does these things will live by them. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, "Cursed is everyone who is hung on the pole." He redeemed us in order that the blessing given to Abraham might come to the Gentiles through Christ Jesus, so that by faith we might receive the promise of the Spirit. Though there are many, though there may be an inherent curse of consequences in our disobedience, or even in the correcting by the hand of God, under the new covenant, if we look for blessings or curses, they are there. So, as we are about to take the wine in remembrance of Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for us, I think we need to think upon the words that God gave thousands of years ago, that this is how we need to live. And we shouldn't look for a way out in terms of it was then. Our time is now. The word is still the same. The difference is the way in which the word is shared. So when we read that we will be blessed if we follow the commands, we will be cursed if we don't, it is true. When we read that Jesus went away and he shall return, and this is what we're waiting for, let's hold fast as we wait for his return. Coming back to Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. The reading aloud of the blessings on Mount Gerizim and the curse of the Mount Ebal is clear that God wanted the word to get to the entire nation, because the entire nation was part of this covenant then, as it is now. Amen.